The silence in their magnificent home had grown louder than any argument. It was a heavy, suffocating silence, the kind that settles in the spaces where a child's laughter should be, the kind that echoes in the vast, empty hallways of a life that has everything and nothing all at once. For 5 years, Jide and Amara had lived in this beautiful, gilded cage. Their love a strong but solitary flame in a house that yearned for the pitter-patter of little feet. The air itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for a life that refused to begin. Jide, a man whose business empire, Omnicorp, was built on decisive action and profitable outcomes, found himself facing a deficit he couldn't fix. He could acquire companies, crush competitors, and predict market trends with an almost supernatural accuracy, but he could not command life into existence. He loved Amara with a depth that surprised even himself, a quiet, profound adoration. That was the only authentic thing in his highly curated world. She was his peace, his sanctuary, a gentle soul in a universe of cutthroat deals and false, predatory smiles. But the one thing he craved, the one thing his powerful mother demanded with the force of a tidal wave, was an heir. A son to carry the Sterling family name, a legacy to inherit the vast, sprawling wealth he had so tirelessly amassed. And Amara, his beautiful, loving, perfect Amara, was barren. The doctors had said so. They had used kinder, clinical words. Of course, unexplained infertility, low probability, idiopathic factors. But the verdict was the same, a death sentence for their shared dream. The garden of their marriage, they were told, would bear no fruit. This verdict was a quiet, shared sorrow for Jide and Amara, a grief they navigated in the lonely darkness of their bedroom. But for his mother, Mama Jide, it was not a sorrow. It was a declaration of war. Mama Jide was a formidable matriarch, a woman forged in the hard, unyielding crucible of old ways. A world where a woman's worth was measured not by her character or her love, but by the sons she produced to carry on a man's name. She saw Amara not as a daughter-in-law to be cherished, but as a beautiful but defective vessel, a flawed acquisition that was failing to provide the expected return on investment. Her early visits had been filled with passive-aggressive prayers, spoken just loud enough for Amara to hear, and pointed, cutting remarks about the neighbor's beautiful grandchildren. But as the years ticked by, her patience had eroded completely, replaced by a cold, sharp-edged cruelty that she wielded like a weapon. 5 years, Jide, she had thundered during her last visit, her voice echoing in the cavernous marble hall, making the crystal chandelier tremble. 5 years, and this house is still silent. Are you a man, or have you married a beautiful piece of wood, a decoration for your expensive house? She is a barren tree in your beautiful garden. You must uproot her before she poisons the very soil. Jide had tried to defend his wife, his love for her a flimsy shield against his mother's relentless venom. Mother, please. This is between Amara and me. The doctors say there is still hope. Hope. Mama Jide had laughed, a harsh, grating sound. Hope does not create an heir. Action does. The world is full of fertile young women from good families who would be honored to bear your children. You are a king, Jide, and a king without a prince is just a man waiting for his kingdom to die. He was a man caught between two powerful, opposing forces, the deep, quiet, and profound love for his wife, and the ingrained, lifelong duty to his mother and his lineage, a duty that had been drilled into him since birth. The pressure was immense, a constant, grinding weight on his soul that was beginning to crush him. He grew distant, the easy laughter that Amara had first fallen in love with becoming a rare, fleeting sound. His touch, once a constant source of comfort, became less frequent, hesitant. The silence in the house was now his doing, a wall he was building between himself and Amara. Brick by painful, unspoken brick. A fortress to protect himself from a choice he knew he was too weak to make. Amara felt the shift with the heightened sensitivity of a flower sensing the coming, killing frost. She saw the turmoil in his eyes, the way he would look at her with a mixture of desperate love and profound, heartbreaking pity. She had prayed until her knees were sore. She had cried until her eyes were raw and swollen. She had subjected her body to countless invasive tests and humiliating treatments, all in the desperate hope of giving him the one thing he so desperately wanted, the one thing that would save their marriage from the slow-acting poison of his mother's influence. Her own heart ached with the palpable emptiness of her womb, a sorrow that was now compounded by the terrifying, ever-present fear of losing the man who was her entire world. The final confrontation came on a Tuesday evening, an evening like any other, yet one that would cleave her life into a before and an after. The air was thick and heavy with unspoken words. Jide entered the living room, where Amara was arranging a bouquet of white lilies, their funereal beauty a stark reflection of her mood. He couldn't meet her eyes. He stared at a point on the wall, just over her shoulder, his jaw clenched. "Amara," he began, his voice a low, gravelly sound of utter defeat. "We can't go on like this." Amara's heart stopped. She knew what was coming. She had been dreading this exact moment, these exact words, for years. "What do you mean, Jide?" she whispered, her voice a fragile thread, though she already knew. "My mother. She has given me an ultimatum," he said, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. "The confession of a coward. She has found another woman for me, a daughter of one of her friends. She says if I do not agree to marry her, she will cut me off. It's either my inheritance, my position as head of the family, my name, or you." He finally looked at her, then, his eyes pleading for an understanding, for an absolution she could not, would not give. "I have no choice, Amara. Don't you see? There is always a choice, Jide," she said, her voice trembling but clear, a surprising strength rising from the depths of her pain. "There is always a choice, and you are making yours." He shook his head, a single fat tear escaping and tracing a path of shame down his cheek. "I love you, Amara. God as my witness, I will always love you. But a man needs a legacy. A man needs a son to carry on his name." He took a deep, shuddering breath, steeling himself for the final, brutal blow that would sever their bond forever. "I have instructed my lawyer to draw up the divorce papers. They are ready. I want you to leave by the end of the week." The cruelty of it, the cold, businesslike finality, knocked the air from Amara's lungs. 5 years of love, of shared dreams, of painful, fruitless hope, all erased in a single, callous sentence. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. A strange cold calm washed over her, a shield of shock protecting her from the full, devastating force of her shattered heart. She just nodded, her dignity the only thing she had left. "If that is your choice," she said softly, her voice now impossibly steady, "then I will go." She turned and walked out of the room, her back straight, her steps even. She walked out of the house she had so lovingly made a home, with nothing but the clothes on her back and a heart that had been broken beyond repair. She walked for hours, her feet carrying her aimlessly through the city streets, the sounds of the bustling metropolis, a dull, distant roar, as she passed a small, humble clinic, its paint peeling under the harsh sun. A wave of dizziness washed over her, so intense and overwhelming that she had to lean against a rough brick wall for support. A strange feeling, a persistent nausea she had been ignoring for the past few weeks, dismissing as stress, suddenly became impossible to ignore. On a desperate, inexplicable whim with the last of the small cash she had in her purse, she went inside. An hour later, she sat opposite a kind, elderly doctor with gentle, knowing eyes. The doctor was looking at her with a soft, perplexed smile. "Mrs. Amara," the doctor said, her voice warm as she looked at the test results. "The fainting spells, the nausea you've been experiencing, it is not due to stress." Amara looked at her, her own eyes hollow, her spirit too broken to even feel curiosity. "Then, what is it?" The doctor's smile widened, a beacon of impossible light in Amara's darkness. "My dear, you are pregnant." Amara stared at her, the word not registering. It was a foreign sound, a word from a language she no longer spoke. "Pregnant?" "Yes," the doctor said, chuckling softly, delighted by the news. And from the look of these very high hormone levels, well, it seems you are going to be very, very busy. Congratulations, Mrs. Amara, you are expecting triplets. The world tilted on its axis, spinning violently out of control. Triplets. After all the years of pain, of shame, of being called barren, of being cast out for her perceived failure, she was carrying not one, but 3 of Jide's children. A hysterical laugh bubbled up in her throat, a sound that was half pure, unadulterated joy, and half devastating, soul-crushing irony. He had divorced her because she couldn't have a child. He had thrown her out like garbage, and he had no idea she was already pregnant with 3. In that moment, a fierce, primal, protective resolve settled in her heart, a lioness's strength she never knew she possessed. He had made his choice. He had chosen his mother, his legacy, his wealth, over her, over them. He had cast her out, and in doing so, he had forfeited all rights to know about the greatest treasures their love had ever produced. These children would be hers alone, her secret, her world. She would raise them away from the toxicity of his family, away from the cruel woman who had called her barren, away from the weak, heartbroken man who had chosen a fortune over a family. She walked out of the clinic, a single, determined woman, her hand resting protectively on her still flat stomach, a secret queen, carrying her hidden, priceless kingdom. The next 5 years were a testament to Amara's unyielding resilience, a quiet epic of struggle and triumph. She disappeared from the high society world she had once inhabited, a world that now felt like a distant, painful dream. She moved to a small, bustling, anonymous town on the other side of the country, a place where no one knew her name or the story of her broken heart. With the small amount of money she had managed to save from the household allowance Jide had given her, money she had been setting aside for a future that no longer existed, she started over. She found a modest 2-bedroom apartment, its walls thin and its paint chipped, but it was hers. It was a sanctuary. The landlady, a kind widowed woman named Mrs. Eno, saw the quiet sorrow in Amara's eyes and the fierce determination in her posture. And for reasons she couldn't explain, she rented the apartment to her for a reduced price. It was the first act of selfless kindness Amara had received since her world had fallen apart, and it meant everything. Her pregnancy was difficult, a lonely journey marked by morning sickness and a gnawing fear of the future. But the feeling of the 3 tiny lives growing inside her was a constant source of strength, a secret joy that fueled her will to survive. When Jide, Jordan, and Jasmine were born, her world, which had been so gray, exploded into vibrant color. They were perfect. They were hers. She started a small catering business from her tiny kitchen. At first, it was just her, cooking for her new friend, Mrs. Eno, and a few neighbors. Her cooking, infused with the boundless love she now poured into her children, was extraordinary. The flavors were rich and complex. The recipes a blend of tradition and innovation. Word of her delicious food spread like wildfire. A small birthday party led to an office lunch, which led to a small wedding reception. Her business, a kitchen, grew slowly, organically, built on the solid foundation of her talent and her tireless hard work. She was not rich, she was not a society lady, but she was independent. And for the first time in a very long time, she was truly, deeply happy. Her life revolved around her 3 beautiful children. They were her sun, her moon, and all her stars. Jide, her firstborn by a matter of minutes, had his father's serious, thoughtful eyes and his quiet, observant nature. Jordan was the charmer, a ball of boundless energy with his father's easy, charismatic smile. And Jasmine, her little princess, was the perfect, delicate blend of them both. They were her world, her reason for breathing, her secret, joyful legacy. They filled the silence in her small home with laughter, with endless questions, with the beautiful, chaotic energy of life. They knew nothing of their father, only that he was a man from a story, a good man who had to go far away on a long journey. It was a simple story, a gentle lie that satisfied their young, curious minds for now. Meanwhile, Jide's life had taken a very different, very cold path. As promised, his mother had found him a new wife, a woman named Cynthia, the beautiful and sophisticated daughter of another wealthy industrialist. Their wedding was the social event of the year, a cold, spectacular affair that was more of a corporate merger than a union of two hearts. Cynthia was perfectly suited to the role of a billionaire's wife. She was also cold, materialistic, and utterly, profoundly self-absorbed. Their magnificent mansion was no longer silent. It was filled with the sounds of her endless shopping deliveries, her loud, vapid conversations with her equally shallow friends, and her constant, grating complaints about the staff, the food, the weather. But the one sound Jide still longed for, the one sound that haunted his dreams, the sound of a child's laughter, was still absent. After 2 years of a hollow, loveless marriage, Cynthia had made it abundantly clear that she had no interest in motherhood, a baby. She had scoffed one night over a joyless dinner. "Darling, it would absolutely ruin my figure. And can you imagine the noise? The mess? No, thank you. We have a perfect life. Let's not complicate it." Jide was wealthier than ever, his empire continuing to expand across Africa and beyond. But his life was an empty, echoing shell. He was miserable. The mansion felt less like a home and more like a luxury prison, its beautiful rooms filled with expensive things he didn't care about and a woman he didn't love. He often found himself late at night in his study, staring at old photographs of Amara, her gentle, loving smile, a painful, stabbing reminder of the true, simple happiness he had so foolishly, so carelessly thrown away. He had chosen his legacy, and his legacy was a life of quiet, opulent, and soul-crushing despair. He had no idea that his true legacy, his 3 beautiful, vibrant children, were growing up just a few hundred kilometers away, happy and deeply loved, in a world he had no part in, a world he had willingly abandoned. The collision of their 2 separate, parallel worlds happened, as it so often does, by a stroke of pure, unadulterated fate, disguised as a mundane business transaction. Jide's company, Omnicorp, was celebrating its 25th anniversary with a grand, week-long corporate event, a spectacular showcase of its power and success. The planning was a massive, logistical undertaking, and the catering was a crucial, high-profile element. The task had fallen to Cynthia, a responsibility she had taken on not out of any sense of duty, but as a prime opportunity to showcase her exquisite taste to her high society friends and rivals. Her usual caterer, a pretentious and wildly expensive French chef, had counseled at the last minute, citing a culinary emergency. Panicked and intensely annoyed, Cynthia had her beleaguered personal assistant scramble to find a replacement. "Just find someone good and available," she had snapped into her phone. "I don't care who it is, as long as their food doesn't taste like street food, and I want them for the entire week. The budget is unlimited." The assistant, after a frantic, citywide search, found a highly recommended, up-and-coming catering service from a neighboring town called Amara's Kitchen. Their online reviews were glowing, their sample menus innovative, their prices surprisingly reasonable. Cynthia, without a second thought, without a flicker of recognition, booked them for the entire week. The name Amara didn't even register. To her, it was just a name on an invoice, a problem solved. The event began. The food from Amara's Kitchen was a phenomenal, unqualified success. The guests, jaded executives and their equally jaded wives, who had tasted everything the world had to offer, were raving about it. The flavors were authentic yet modern. The presentation was elegant without being fussy, and the service was impeccable. For the first few days of the event, Amara had managed the entire operation from a distance, sending her most trusted and well-trained team while she stayed home with the children. But for the final grand gala, the jewel in the crown of the anniversary week, the client's contract had insisted on the head chef being present on site. Amara knew it was Jide's company. She had seen the Omnicorp logo on the contract. Her heart had hammered against her ribs, a wild bird trapped in a cage, but her hard-won professionalism won out. This was a big contract, the biggest of her career. It could elevate her business to a whole new level. She would go. She would do her job with the excellence she was known for, and she would leave. She would be just another face in the crowd, a ghost from a past he had chosen to forget. She arrived at the Omnicorp Tower, a place that felt like a relic from another lifetime, a place filled with ghosts of a happiness that had been stolen from her. She was dressed in a simple but elegant black chef's uniform, her hair tied back neatly under a professional cap. She moved with a quiet, unshakable confidence, the shy, heartbroken woman of 5 years ago, completely replaced by a poised, successful, and self-made entrepreneur. She was in the grand ballroom, a space she remembered all too well, overseeing the final setup of the magnificent buffet. When Jide walked in, he was doing a final walkthrough with his team, his face a mask of bored authority. He looked older, she thought. The lines of stress and unhappiness were etched more deeply around his eyes. He didn't see her at first. He was busy giving orders, his voice carrying the familiar, commanding weight she remembered so well. Then, his eyes swept across the lavish buffet table, a cursory glance at the culinary artistry, and he froze. Their eyes met across the crowded, bustling room. For Jide, it was as if the world had stopped spinning on its axis. The noise, the people, the music, it all faded into a roaring silence. It was Amara. But it wasn't the Amara he remembered, the one who haunted his dreams. This woman was radiant, confident, her face glowing with a self-assurance that was breathtaking. She was more beautiful, more alive than he had ever remembered. Amara, he breathed, his voice barely a whisper, a sound lost in the chaos of his own mind. He started walking towards her, his feet moving of their own accord, oblivious to his confused team, to the bustling staff, to everything and everyone but the woman standing before him. Amara's heart was pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs, but she held her ground, her expression a perfect mask of calm professionalism. "Mr. Jide," she said, her voice impossibly steady. "It's a pleasure to be of service." The formality of her tone, the cold, respectful Mr. Jide, was a slap in the face, a brutal reminder of the chasm between them. He reached her, his eyes searching her face, 1,000 questions, 1,000 regrets, a lifetime of sorrow swirling within them. "What how you look," he stammered, a powerful CEO reduced to a babbling, incoherent fool. Before he could say more, a small, clear voice piped up from behind Amara. "Mummy, are we finished yet? Jordan is trying to eat all the little cakes." Amara turned, a soft, warm, maternal smile instantly transforming her face, a smile Jide had not seen in 5 long years. 3 small children, 2 identical boys and a little girl, all dressed in neat party clothes, came running towards her. Jide stared at them. He stared at the little girl, with her bright, curious eyes and a smile that was a perfect echo of her mother's. And then he stared at the 2 boys. One of them, the one who had just spoken, the one named Jordan, looked up at him with a mischievous grin. And in that moment, Jide's world, his carefully constructed, miserable, empty world, shattered into a million irreparable pieces. The boy had his eyes. He had his smile. He even had the small, unique, almost invisible birthmark just above his right eyebrow that Jide himself had, a tiny detail he saw every morning in the mirror. He looked down at the boy, then back at Amara, the blood draining from his face, his legs threatening to give way. He did the math in his head. 5 years. The divorce, the timing, it was impossible. It was undeniable. He looked at the other boy, Jaden, a perfect, more serious mirror image, and the little girl, Jasmine, a delicate, beautiful fusion of them both. "Triplets, Amara," he whispered, his voice shaking, his entire empire, his entire life, crumbling to dust around him. Are they mine?" Amara looked at him, her expression no longer just professional, but now imbued with the quiet, unshakable, fierce strength of a mother protecting her young. She looked down at her 3 beautiful children, her entire world, then back at the broken, shell-shocked man before her. "Yes, Jide," she said, her voice clear and without a trace of malice or triumph. Just a simple statement of fact. They are your children. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of Jide's own heart, hammering a frantic, guilty, accusing rhythm against the walls of his empty life. He had spent 5 long years mourning a legacy he thought he could never have, while his real legacy, his 3 beautiful, living, breathing children, had been growing up without him, happy, healthy, and loved, nurtured by the very woman he had so cruelly, so foolishly, cast away. He had divorced his wife because she couldn't have a child. He didn't know she was already pregnant with 3. And in that single, devastating moment, the full, crushing, unforgivable weight of his choice came crashing down upon him. The rest of the evening was a surreal, out-of-body experience for Jide. He moved through the glittering gala like an automaton, his smile a grotesque, painful mask, his handshakes limp and disconnected, his mind a chaotic, screaming whirlwind of regret. And what if he saw Amara from a distance, a model of professional grace, directing her team with a quiet efficiency that he, as a CEO, could only admire. He saw his children being looked after by one of Amara's trusted staff members in a small, quiet room off the main ballroom. He could hear their laughter, a sweet, painful melody that he had no right to enjoy, a melody that tore his heart to shreds. He saw his wife, Cynthia, flitting from group to group, a social butterfly completely oblivious to the personal apocalypse that had just detonated in her husband's life, complaining loudly about the temperature of the champagne. He saw his mother, Mama Jide, holding court like a queen in the center of the room, bragging to her friends about her son's immense success, completely, blissfully unaware that the grandchildren she so desperately craved, the very reason for all this pain, were just a few meters away. The crushing, suffocating hypocrisy of it all was a poison in his veins. After the event, Jide went home, but he couldn't rest. The silent mansion had never felt more like a tomb. He sat in his cavernous, silent study until dawn. The face of his son, Jordan, a perfect, smiling miniature of his own, burned into his memory. The next day, he drove to Amara's small but vibrant restaurant in the neighboring town. He found her there, in the kitchen, her hands dusted with flour, her face serene and focused. "We need to talk," he said, his voice raw with sleeplessness and sorrow. They sat at a small, simple table in the corner of the empty restaurant, the morning sun streaming through the window. "I want to be in their lives," he began, the words feeling clumsy, arrogant, and utterly inadequate. "I want to be their father." Amara looked at him, her gaze steady and unreadable. "Being a father is more than just biology, Jide. It's more than just providing money. It's about being there. It's about scraped knees and bedtime stories and parent-teacher meetings. It's about love, and it's about time. You have been absent for 5 years. I didn't know," he pleaded, the desperation raw and ugly in his voice. "I swear to you, Amara, if I had known, I would have... You would have what?" she interrupted, her voice still quiet but now edged with the hard, sharp steel of her hard-won independence. "Forced me to come back, taken them from me, put me back in that cage with your mother. You made your choice, Jide. You chose your mother's approval over our love. You chose a hypothetical legacy over a real partnership. You walked away, and I built this life, our life, from the ashes of the one you so casually burned down." He had no defense against her truth. It was absolute. He could only sit there, a king stripped of his crown, a beggar at the feet of the woman he had so profoundly wronged. "What do you want from me, Amara?" he asked, his voice breaking. "I'll give you anything. Half of my company, houses, cars, anything." Amara shook her head, a sad, weary smile on her lips. "I don't want your money, Jide. I never did. All I ever wanted was you. But that man is gone, and I am no longer the woman who would wait for him to choose her." She stood up, her posture regal, her simple apron looking more majestic than any of Cynthia's designer gowns. "If you want to be a part of their lives, you will do it on my terms. You will start slowly. You will earn their trust. You will earn their love. You will not disrupt their happy, stable lives with your sudden wealth and your complicated, toxic family. You will start as a friend of Mummy's, and we will see, over time, if you can learn how to be a father. Her terms were harder, more demanding than any business negotiation he had ever faced, but he agreed without hesitation. He had to. And so, his long, painful, and humbling journey of redemption began. It was awkward at first, almost comically so. He would visit on weekends, arriving in a modest car, bringing simple gifts, books, small toys, not the extravagant, showy presents he was used to buying. He would sit on the floor, a billionaire, in expensive casual clothes, and help Jide, his serious little man, with his building blocks. He would listen, utterly captivated, as Jordan recounted his school adventures with breathless, non-stop excitement. He would watch in awe as Jasmine, his little artist, drew colorful, imaginative pictures, her tongue sticking out in concentration. He was not Daddy. He was Mr. Jide, his mummy's nice friend from the city. But with each visit, with each shared story, with each small, genuine smile, a single brick from the wall of formality would crumble. He also had to face his mother. He went to her, his heart heavy, but his resolve as hard as diamond. He told her everything. He watched as her face, the face of the woman who had orchestrated his life's greatest tragedy, moved through a kaleidoscope of emotions, disbelief, then sputtering anger, then a slow, dawning, abject horror at the full scope of what she had done. She had driven away the mother of her only grandchildren, the legacy she had so desperately craved, the legacy for which she had destroyed her son's happiness, had been there all along, and her own blind, suffocating pride had made her cast it away. The confrontation was ugly, a storm of accusations and tearful regrets, but it was necessary. Jide finally stood up to her, not as a dutiful, obedient son, but as a father, a lion protecting his cubs. He made it clear, if she ever wanted to meet her grandchildren, she would have to apologize to their mother, sincerely, humbly, and on Amara's terms. He also ended his sham of a marriage with Cynthia. The divorce was quick, cold, and transactional, devoid of any real emotion. A fitting end to a relationship that had never had any. His life was being stripped down to its essential, painful truths, and it was a cleansing, liberating process. Months turned into a year. Mr. Jide became a fixture in the children's lives. He was there for birthdays. He was there for school plays. He was there for fevers in the middle of the night, sitting quietly in a corner while Amara expertly soothed a crying child. He was learning, slowly, painfully, what it truly meant to be a father. He was earning their love, not with his money, but with his presence, with his time, with his heart. One sunny afternoon, they were all at the park. Jide was pushing Jordan on the swings, higher and higher. The boys' delighted laughter echoing in the warm air. A sound that was now the most beautiful music in the world to Jide. Suddenly, Jordan shouted, his voice a clear, happy bell, higher, Daddy, higher, Daddy, higher. The world stopped. Jide froze, his hands gripping the cold iron chains of the swing. Jordan had called him Daddy. He looked over at Amara, who was sitting on a nearby bench, watching them. There were tears in her eyes, but she was smiling. A beautiful, radiant, forgiving smile. In that moment, Jide knew that his long, painful journey was not over, but he was finally on the right path. He hadn't just found his children. He was beginning to find himself, the man he was always meant to be, the man Amara had first fallen in love with. He had lost his wife because he thought she was barren, only to discover she was carrying his entire world, his entire future. And in his humble, patient quest to earn back his children, he was slowly, hopefully, earning back the love of the only woman who had ever truly mattered. His real legacy wasn't in the cold, empty skyscrapers he built, but in the small, warm, loving family he was finally, humbly, learning to be a part of.